I analyzed the setups of the most productive engineers in 2026. They've all ditched manual config for this specific AI-first stack. Here is the exact list. I've spent the last 6 months auditing the workflows of staff engineers at top-tier firms and high-growth AI startups. The biggest difference between the top 1% and everyone else. It isn't their typing speed or their knowledge of leak code. It's how they automate the parts of coding that don't actually require a human brain. They stopped fighting their IDEs and started using a stack that understands the context of their entire repository in real time. Today, I'm revealing the Zero Config Stack. 5 AI-first IDEs and extensions that eliminate boilerplate, automate tedious migrations, and let you focus purely on high-level system architecture. If you're still spending hours tweaking your config files or manually writing repetitive logic, you're falling behind. By the end of this video, you'll have the exact toolkit to reclaim 10 to 15 hours of your work week. Let's dive in. Most developers think they're working when they're tweaking a config file or fighting with a YAML indentation error. But let's be honest, that's not engineering. That's administrative overhead. You spend the first 2 hours of your day just getting the environment to behave. Writing the actual business logic. That's usually only 20% of your time. The rest is boilerplate, repetitive imports, manual type definitions, hunting through outdated documentation for a function you used 6 months ago. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And here is the scary part, the gap is widening. While you're manually mapping API responses, the top 1% have moved to zero config stacks. They aren't necessarily smarter than you. They just stopped doing the boring stuff. They've automated the plumbing. If you're still treating your IDE as just a fancy text editor, you're not just falling behind. You're becoming the bottleneck in your own workflow. The mental energy you waste on setup is energy you aren't using to solve the actual hard problems. The manual config era is officially dead. If you're still living in it, you're working 10 times harder for half the output. Stop wasting hours tweaking your or hunting for the perfect VS Code extension. The top 1% of engineers have stopped configuring and started prompting. They've moved to what I call the zero config stack. This is a curated ecosystem where the tools don't just assist you, they understand your entire code base. Let's dive into the 5 tools defining the 2026 workflow. First up, Cursor AI. If you're still using a standard IDE with a side chat plugin, you're lagging. Cursor isn't a plugin, it's a fork of VS Code built from the ground up for AI. The killer feature here is the native codebase indexing. It doesn't just guess the next line. It knows exactly how your auth middleware interacts with your database schema across 20 different files. You can literally tell it, refactor the payment flow to support Stripe and PayPal, and it writes the changes across your entire project simultaneously. No more manual copy-pasting. Next, we have the evolution of GitHub Copilot. We've moved past simple autocomplete. In 2026, it's all about agentic workflows. With Copilot Workspace, you start with a GitHub issue. The AI analyzes the bug, proposes a plan, and generates a pull request before you even open your editor. You've shifted from being a writer to being a reviewer. But for the heavy-duty architecture, the 1% still lean on JetBrains. Why? Because LLMs can hallucinate, but static analysis doesn't. JetBrains has merged deep code intelligence with generative AI. It doesn't just suggest code that looks right, it suggests code that is mathematically correct according to the type system. It's the safety net for professional-grade software. Now, let's talk about the glue. Raycast. Most devs use it as a launcher. The pros use it as an AI command center. With AI extensions, you can query your internal documentation, trigger CI/CD pipelines, or convert JSON to TypeScript without ever leaving your keyboard. It eliminates the context-switching tax that kills productivity. Finally, for the front end, v0.dev. Boilerplate UI is officially dead. You no longer spend 3 hours centering a div or building a landing page from scratch. You prompt the layout, iterate in real time, and export production-ready React code directly into your cursor setup. That is the zero config stack. You aren't fighting your tools anymore. Your tools are fighting the complexity for you. Now, if you want to replicate this exact zero config stack, I've linked everything, Cursor, JetBrains, Copilot, and Raycast, in the description below. Some are affiliate links, which supports the channel and keeps these deep dives free. But here is the real result. It's not just about typing faster. It's about the cognitive load. When you automate the boilerplate, you stop fighting your IDE and start solving high-level architecture problems. The engineers I analyzed aren't necessarily smarter. They've just outsourced the grunt work to the machine. The gap between the top 1% and everyone else is widening. Don't get left behind using a 2022 workflow in 2026. Stop wasting your weekends on manual config. Grab the tools in the description, hit subscribe to stay ahead of the tech curve, and start shipping. I'll see you in the next one.